Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Bob Lachance. Thanks for being on the show, Bob.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. A little about Bob. He's from West Hartford, Connecticut, and played ice hockey for Boston University, playing a vital role in their 1995 national championship. With only 2 classes left to graduate, he dropped out of school and signed a professional contract with the St. Louis Blues. He went on to play 8 years professionally, 4 in the U.S. and 4 in Europe. At 30, with his professional career over, he self-educated himself in real estate and began his career as an investor. He acquired his first flip in 2004 and has done over 700 transactions since then. That's a lot of transactions, Bob. He also started multiple businesses, but his main focus is REVA Global LLC, which concentrates on offering trained real estate virtual assistants to real estate professionals. So, Bob, I'm looking forward to this conversation because all the listeners know that I use virtual assistants for everything and have for a long time. I mean, like every day there's many VAs doing lots of things for me. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know about you and your company and just your all's process. But, give us a little more about, even your transition into real estate. I find that fascinating. You have this professional, you're a professional athlete, but obviously professional athlete career is not the normal length of career that most other professional careers, are for obvious reasons, but stopping that, self-educating, jumping in, give us a little details there. Then let's jump into why we need a virtual assistant.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, the transition was interesting. I was playing in my last 4 years, I was playing hockey in Europe. I was in Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and then back to Switzerland. And then, I decided at the end, my wife was here working full time. She was in medical sales at the time. So the decision was either I pull her out of what she was doing and us travel around, and I could have played probably 10 more years. But, when you're done with hockey, you also have to take a step back and say, what's best for your family, right? So I took a step back. It wasn't, trust me, it wasn't easy because, think about this. When you're playing sports, you're living in the locker room with your friends all the time. It's not real life. I'll be honest with you. It's a fantasy life that is really fun, but you also have to grow up once in a while. And the time that I grew up is I unfortunately missed my oldest kid now, his birth. So we had a planned C-section. Yeah. So that was pretty much the nail in the coffin. I was on a flight to Belarus from Switzerland, and my wife in labor. Long story short, ended up missing my oldest son's birth. And then I figured, you know what? All right, it's time to hang up the skates and jump into something. So my transition was I either go back to school, finish my next 2 classes, or I jump into an industry that does not need a degree. So I figured I would do some research, and real estate kept popping up, and jumped in.
Wow. And over 700 transactions later, here we are.
Yeah. So I first jumped in, I bought a course, just like probably many of us, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I bought a course on all about real estate, but nothing specific, right? It was all about single family properties, multifamily properties, commercial, the whole gamut. But one thing that I did learn is they taught me a little bit about what farming areas, you get in your car, you drive by each neighborhood, you see a dilapidated house, you see, high grass, the whole 9 yards. So I made an offer on my first property. Didn't know anything. I'll be 100% frank with you. I knew nothing about any of the industry. I didn't have contractors. I had a little money put away, but I didn't understand what financing was. And when the offer got accepted, my first thing that was going to my mind is, oh no, what do I do now? So I figured it out.
That's probably what your wife was thinking too.
That's exactly right. Well, she was like, why don't you go back to school and finish your 2 classes? So that was another battle on another episode. But so I ended up figuring it out, ended up making $32,000 on that transaction, and did well.
She's pretty happy.
Yeah, she's very happy. But I also figured out that I had zero systems, zero processes. I had no team. I had nothing, no systems. So I joined a local REVA group, and then I jumped into short sale industry after that. Negotiated short sales, started a short sale coaching program in 2005. And then from that, helped start another coaching program, real estate education coaching program in 2007, helped grow that. And through that time, investing in, wholesaling, rehabbing, short sales, got into commercial as well, private money lending. I saw a huge need for help. So, because a lot of us, myself included, we're either working part-time or full-time in different industries, and we need help in our day. So I figured, you know what, I was always searching for what that thing was, and I got introduced to virtual assistants back in 2013, and then a light bulb went on. I'm like, you know what, there's a business there. So I put all of the training and education in the real estate industry that I helped build, and I put that into training virtual assistants overseas, and we, proof of concepts 2014, I started my first business, and then it morphed to 5-6 years later. The proof of concept works, and it's a very, very big need, and whether it's a real estate professionals, whether it's agents, investors, or property managers, syndication, etc.
Okay, so I'm not going to go in depth about why we need VAs. We've talked about it many times on the show, and the listeners, if you don't have a VA, you need a VA. I can't even like stress that enough. Like I couldn't function every day. Like so many things are happening in the background in our operation through VAs, and it just has made my life so much easier. Not that it's easier, but ultimately, they're the tasks that I need to get done every day that are repetitive or not a higher dollar task. I can count on them being done, and probably a lot of times a lot better than I could even do it. So, but Bob, I thought, why don't you just jump right in and let's, tell us a little about REVA Global LLC and a little bit about, the types of VAs that you all have. And then I got lots of questions.
Yeah, the first thing I like to cover is, why people look at VAs or why they even think about hiring VAs. And there's three main reasons. One of them is time, and I could explain a little more on that. Your time freedom, efficiency, and then the last one would be scalability, right? And all in an affordable manner, right? So the first one in time, when I look at time, everyone has a different definition of time. For me personally, I look at time and I say, you know what, if my wife asks me to dinner or to lunch during the day and I say no, that means I don't have enough time in my day, right? I know many of us could figure this or could go through this scenario. We're sitting on vacation, maybe it's on a beach or something, the kids are running around and you got your phone right next to you, right? And the phone rings.
First mistake.
First mistake. And you're looking at your phone, you're saying, uh-oh, should I open it? Your wife is right next to you saying, if you pick up that phone, I am going to kill you, right? So, and you're looking at inside, you're killing yourself inside because you're saying that one phone call could be a $20,000, $30,000, deal, or 10,000, whatever number it is. But you also need to be present. So what happens is when you bring your phone with you, and you're the only person that can actually answer that phone, that's a really tough thing for any of us to be in. I know, I've lived through that. I'm sure you have before.
Yes.
And I read a lot of books. I don't know about, you, I'm sure you do. You really read a ton of books, but one of the most recent books I read was Leadership by John Maxwell. And when you look at time, one of the chapters, it talks about being a soloist, moving from a soloist leader to a conductor leader. So many of us solopreneurs are really just looking at, we're soloists, and you start looking at it and saying, all right, what is a soloist? Picture and imagine an orchestra, right? So you're on an orchestra, but you are playing every single instrument on that orchestra, right? Now you move over to the conductor because that means you're going nuts, right? You're answering the phones, you're answering emails, you're doing every task. If you're a property manager, you're taking calls from tenants, you're taking calls from owners. You got tenants are mad at the neighbor, so you're taking all these crappy calls, right? And instead, if you're a conductor, the conductor, as soon as they make one arm movement, right, this beautiful music's playing, right? So that means you move one arm, your VA is now taking the calls from your tenants. Your VAs are taking calls from the owners. As an example.
All that time back.
Yep, you're getting all that time back. So the definition of time for me and you may be different than somebody else, but you get more time to do what you want to do, whether it's, spending more time with a family, or whether it's spending time, growing and building your business. But you and I get to decide that when you do have help, in reference to what we're talking about on the VA side. The second one is efficiency, doing more in less time, right? Taking off, I think you said it perfectly, taking off those admin tasks out of your day that really sap your energy, that don't really, picture this: when you pick up your phone in the morning, you're like, oh, I got to do A, B, C, and D. And you're like, oh, I don't want to do any of that. Those are the type of tasks that you could offset and outsource to a virtual assistant. And finally, the last one is scalability. There's many individuals that want to grow their business, and if they're specifically in their day on a daily basis and they can't pull themselves out through a 10,000-foot overview and really just, be the conductor in their business, it is definitely detrimental to your scalability and growth in your business.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I've lived it over the last few years, and cannot say enough. I've already said it, but you got to have a VA. And I tell you, one thing that I love about hiring a VA, and I love to know how you all structure this, is that you don't have to start a full-time employee. You can start with just 2 hours a week.
Yep. Yeah, we do part-time, full-time, because we have found, I've done a lot of research over to see if it was best as a business model, right? So for me as a business model, it was better for us to offer part-time, full-time for the management piece, right? Because it's easier to manage somebody part-time, full-time, and we set up the systems and processes in the background to make sure that we get to fulfill it. We do a lot of training for our virtual assistants in the background, in the back end, to where, at the end of the day, you do an end-of-day report to make sure that, for you and me, if we're thinking about, all right, we're hiring a virtual employee, are they working? That's a question that everybody has. How do we know if they're working or not? What we do to offset that is we have them send in a start-of-day report and an end-of-day report to make sure all of those tasks and those metrics that you want done are done. And we also brought on what we call a client service manager, which is a manager on top of that VA that helps you manage them. So we try to fill in some of those gaps.
I know one of the big questions I get about using VAs is, like finding that right one.
Yep.
We're going to go to all this trouble, and I hear it all the time. I'm going to go to all this trouble training this person. And then, and obviously, the value that they're providing through that's not very much, right? You're paying them, but you got to train them, and then they're going to up and leave, and then you got to do it again, or, how do I trust them? All these things. So, how do you all navigate that as far as, qualifying somebody to be a VA?
Yeah. So great question. We have a 4-step recruiting process, where we have a sourcing team that sources resumes. To year to date right now, I don't even know what date this is, but we're still in, as of this month, we've had over 1,500 applications that we source through. So that's within 1 month's time. So we do a lot of the heavy lifting to make sure that you don't get those job hoppers, to make sure that the English proficiency is what, we want in a company, make sure they have a neutral accent. One of the great things about, we work out of Philippines. So that's where my company, I live in Connecticut, but my company's based out of the Philippines.
Okay.
And the reason being is because English is one of the national languages of the Philippines, which is English. And the other thing that we love about the Philippines is that they have a very, very high value on education. So everyone that comes through our program or our company has a 4-year college degree, which is, which is high. And everyone has to have at least a year of call center experience. So I know that's one of the things that many people ask as a question. The other thing is they're very eager, the Filipino population, very eager to serve. They have they're natural caretakers. So that's one of the reasons. I know I kind of balled a number of things into one, but that's the reason why I, as a company, picked the Philippines.
Yes, I've used numerous from there that have been really good.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. So what's the majority of tasks that these VAs are doing for you, or doing for other people, I guess? What do you see them doing most? Because often it's like, well, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what a VA could even do for me. And usually I tell people, like, okay, sit down and write down everything you do today, and there, at least 50% of it, I bet you could hand off to somebody else. But what do they do? For the majority of people, what types of tasks?
So obviously we're, your particular podcast is syndication podcast, which are apartment complexes, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So let's focus on our clients that actually use virtual assistants for property management and things like that. So you break them down into an admin virtual assistant and a phone virtual assistant, like an inside sales agent, ISA. Maybe that's more of the terminology is used. But so it's a phone VA and an admin VA, and you start looking at, tasks for property managers. So you have resident services, you have client services. So like I touched upon before, you have tenants calling you on a daily basis, just hammering your phone saying, maybe complaining about the neighbor, maybe complaining about parking, maybe complaining about, I don't know, their kid was hanging from the light, the chandelier, or whatever you have up there, right? So they're calling about maintenance issues as an example. So virtual assistants are unbelievable at taking those calls and then sending them off. What they do very well too is, let's say they have a ticket, you have a ticketing system, right? Like Zendesk as an example. Virtual assistants are fantastic taking those tickets and sending them off to where they need to be, right? It takes a lot of time off of your day, so your phone's not blowing up saying, oh, you got another ticket, you got another ticket. Same thing on the inbound call, because you'll have tenants and owners calling on a bigger portfolio saying, hey, what's going on with my units? Is it rented? Is it not rented, et cetera? So they could take a lot of those phone calls and answer many questions. One of the things that we did very, very well, and that I highly recommend, whether you use virtual assistants or not, is create a kind of a knowledge base. So whoever's taking those calls can answer those calls and, or can answer those questions, like almost like a top 10 frequently asked questions. We've helped numerous companies actually create that knowledge base. For instance, let's just say, I don't know, how to use a plunger. May sound weird, but I know that's one of the top things that happens with units, right? So do a quick little video, put it into the knowledge base, and then now the VA could explain it to the tenant on how to unplunge the toilet, as an example, right? Could be, you could go through a laundry list of things that can be on your agenda, but those are all time-consuming things that would be taken out of your day if you drive them to your phone, right?
Yes.
That's a very, very good one. Some other things, I'll give you an example, and I'll give you some more tasks. I just got an email from one of my buddies as a property manager, and he wants a VA to answer calls, text, email. I'm reading it just so you know. I printed it up to make sure, because this is perfect. Answering calls, text, email from tenants about maintenance and other property manager-related concerns. Number 2, create, update, and respond to tickets. Number 3, follow up with late rent payments. Number 4, coordinate move-in, move-out walkthrough. And finally, number 5, coordinate lease renewals. So that's what he wants from his virtual assistant. He wants 2 of them. So as an example, we typically put them in different categories like collections, leasing, lease renewals, accounting, and different categories. So those are just some of the categories that we have written
So
out.
tell me about how are we matched with that assistant that's going to work with us?
Yep. We have them do a DISC profile. So for the profile, it's kind of behavioral personality profiling. I'm not going to get too much into DISC profile. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yes.
But if we know we want someone on the phone, we're going to match them up with a high D, like a dominant personality, or high I, which is interactive social. So we'll do all that legwork at the beginning. And then once we get the task list in, we know if it's going to be someone who the task set. So let me take a step back and let's give you a little overview of how the process works. We have a sourcing recruiting department. We have a training department. We have a placements department, and then we have an operations department. So our sourcing recruiting, they bring in the virtual assistants on various platforms over in the Philippines. Our training team, we have a month layout of a training platform. And then our placements team is kind of like Match.com. So we have a new client that comes in. Obviously, we have a sales department. We have a new client that comes in, and all of their tasks go to our placements department, just like Match.com. So then now our placements department goes to our training department and said, all right, these are the tasks that we need. Who is the best fit for these tasks? So we put them together, and then it's passed on to the operations department, where our client service manager then manages that relationship with the client.
Okay. So how do we communicate with this VA?
Directly. So what we do is we have a meet and greet with the client service manager, who's the manager of the VA, and the VA. So whether it's chat, so I use Glip, I use Viber, right, or Skype. Many individuals use Skype. I use Viber and Glip, which is attached to like Ring Central. So that's how I do it. I text them, I call them, I email them, talk to them all the time during the day.
Okay. So what about like costs associated with using a VA like this?
For us at Service, we have, like I said, part-time, full-time. If you have a full-time virtual assistant, it's $9.60 an hour. We as a company pay for their health insurance.
Wow.
We do a lot of stuff behind the scenes and offer them some great benefits, like 0% loans, health insurance we pay. The reason why we do that too, and we spend a lot of resources back into our team, is so they don't, just like I said at the beginning, you want to make sure they don't job hop.
Right.
We have some of the highest retention, both client and VA retention. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I know that's a very important part of, when I first started working with virtual assistants, that was my first worry. I'm going to hire a VA, and what happens if they leave? Now I got to, retrain them again. I got to go through the recruiting process and all those kind of steps in the middle of it. Before you know it, you're going through another 100 resumes, and you're going to get another one. You got to rinse and repeat. It's just a lot of pain buttons there for me. So we figured we create a process and a system to take that pain away from, our clients.
Wow. So, what tips do you have to that person that's like, Bob, all that sounds good, but I just can't hand off those tasks to somebody in the Philippines. I just can't give them access to those things.
Yep. I would say really what it has to do with do you want more time back in your day, or do you want to scale your business? Right. And I always go back to that. And I say, when you wake up in the morning, and if you look at your calendar and you have cold sweats, it's time to start looking at outsourcing, whether you're bringing it in-house or, you look at a virtual assistant. I know we're talking about virtual assistants here, but in any business, if I put my business consulting hat on, I would say, then you got to get help. Because that's just not a good place for any one of us to be in the space of being a business owner, because, overwhelm will stop you in any type of business. So the whole goal is to make sure, we all keep moving forward and take steps forward in our business, right? So whether it's hiring a virtual assistant or getting help within your business, I would highly recommend looking at those two things.
Overwhelmed will stop you. I wrote that down. That's a good one. So what about giving them access to email or other sensitive information?
Right. I have no problem with it. What we do is typically, so you'll have Google Drive. I use Google Drive, and I have my email with my company. So it's, bob@revaglobal.com. I'll have Ann@revaglobal.com, Asia@revaglobal.com. Those are two of my VAs, and I'll give them direct access to what I want through Google. And I use Google Drive. You got many different platforms out there, but for me, I use Google.
So what about, do you have VAs like managing your personal email account?
I do not. I personally manage my own email account, but they have access to my Drive because we create systems, processes, SOPs, etc. So they have access to that. For me personally, I handle my own email.
Okay. So give us a couple tips on creating that system, SOP, that to be able to help train somebody like this that's in another country.
Yep, absolutely. So it's the same thing. When you look at some of the systems and processes, I'll give you an example, right? So let's say you want to acquire properties and you want your virtual assistant to do outbound dialing. What I do is I create where they get the list, where they pull the list from, right? Is it, are you going to pull a list of delinquent property taxes? Are you going to pull a list of out-of-state owners? What kind of list are you going to pull? Is it going to be probate? Is it going to be pre-foreclosure? So I train the virtual assistant through video and screenshots on how to actually compile that list. Then they'll go down and they'll skip trace as well. So now you do another set of videos written on how to skip trace. And then the type of dialer you're going to use, the outbound dial. And then you're going to obviously train them on the script. We have a script that we do that. And then that's going to be your standard operating procedure. I'll give you an example. So we have a team that outbound dials for me. I just pulled an apartment and a multifamily list. and we have our VAs calling all day long on that list to set an appointment just to gauge seller motivation. Say, hey, are you interested in potentially receiving an offer and selling the property? That's all I want to hear is, yes, I'm interested in entertaining an offer. Boom, that lead goes to our acquisition guy, and then he takes it from there. So that would be an example.
Okay. Bob, unfortunately, we're almost out of time, and I've got a few more questions to ask you. But what else about, hiring a VA do we need to know, especially for those and myself that, ones that are just getting started thinking about using a VA, or maybe even somebody that's a veteran with VAs, what are some techniques that maybe you want to share with us?
Yeah, one thing I would definitely, and I learned this in a podcast, and this is when you bring on virtual assistants, the 4 R's: roles, responsibilities, requirements, results, right? So be crystal clear on what the role is, right? I see a lot of investors, real estate professionals, they're not crystal clear on what role they want to fill. Second one is the responsibilities, meaning write out all of the tasks that you really want that virtual assistant to do. So it's kind of in a job description, but you could put it in checklist bullet format. Also, what requirements? You want them to have a 4-year college degree? Would you like them to have a call center experience, as an example? And then finally, results. What type of results would you want? Do you want them to send you, what's realistic? Do you want them to send you 1, 2, 3 warm leads, we'll call them? Someone raised the hand that said, hey, I do want to sell my house, as an example, just on the outbound dialing example that we used. So make sure that we, number 1, are crystal clear in the roles, 2, responsibilities, 3, requirements, and 4, results.
No, that's good. I like that. I was taking notes. That's awesome. So, and Bob, I can't stress enough, like I've said, about hiring a VA, and I'm going to check you all out for sure. And so, but you're a seasoned real estate investor, lots of success, and over 700 transactions. That's amazing. But tell me, how are you prepared for this potential downturn that everybody's talking about?
And it's buy and holds. I invested also in a syndication. So it's really the cash flow coming in per month. I look at real estate investors, and I look at the same way. It's actually using funds, right? Whether it's wholesaling, rehabbing, using those flip funds to buy, maybe into a syndication or into, a 3-4 family property, 5 family property, whatever it is that you manage yourself. But it is that cash flow each month that will get anybody by any rough patch in the industry.
Nice. So what's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
You know what? I work a lot with other individuals in the industry. I don't look at people as competition. I look at other individuals in the industry as how can we help each other. So if you work more as a team, I'm a firm believer of a growth mentality, right? Whereas I don't look at someone as, hey, you're a competitor, I can't do business with you. I'm saying, all right, how can we help each other grow? I think for me, that's been a very, very good push in the right direction, because that's something that is something that everybody needs in the industry. And one other thing is the law of authenticity. Always be authentic in what you do, because people know nowadays they don't want to do business with people that are just, charlatans, if you will. Just be authentic, be who you are, and be okay with what happens if you are who you are.
I like that. So tell us the number one thing that's contributed to your success.
Number one thing, again, is I'm more service minded. And I've always been, even growing up playing sports, I've always been more of an assist guy. So I would, playing with a guy, and if he got 3 goals, I'd be happy for him. I wouldn't care because I'd get 3 assists. You're not the front person, which I never cared. And I think it's really just being genuinely caring for people and helping them in their business. And or if someone's working for you, try to pick them up. Don't bring them down. Don't be an authoritative, leader, or where you're stepping on them to pick yourself up. I think more of the side-by-side leadership has been very, very beneficial. I think that is really the way to go.
Couldn't agree more. And, that's a great transition to how you like to give back.
Absolutely. So we have a charity. It's kind of a lot like your charity. My wife started a Helping Hands Foundation, or she calls it Helping Hands Project, out of the Philippines. Our latest one we did was for the Home for the Angels. This was about 3 months ago today, where we gave supplies, we gave money. And Home for the Angels, they take in abandoned babies, and they actually find individuals all over the world to adopt them. So that's one of the things that we're passionate about doing on different charities throughout the year.
Nice. I like that. I'd love to learn more about that myself. So Bob, thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to learning more about REVA Global LLC and your all's VAs and potentially working with them in the future. But so the listeners can as well, tell them how to get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Absolutely. Our website is revaglobal.com. You could also email me at bob@revaglobal.com. So revaglobal.com. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.